has resigned, and Beverly is going to inform the Public Health Committee about this. I don't know if it's our place to say about replacing it, because it's definitely dictated by the statutes who shall be it, but we're almost finished, and I'm wondering if there's a suggestion we might want to put along with it, that we're actually wrapping up all of our work, and not necessarily need to say again.
Yeah. The catch up would be difficult.
Yes. So if is everybody pretty much with that? Is there anyone that's against it?
Yeah.
We still have 7 people, and that will. So Beverly, that's the one issue. The other housekeeping was to bring up whether or not we wanted to continue meeting every other week. Hello, Mary Kay.
As opposed to what? What's the alternative? More frequent or less frequent?
Remember, we were working once a month.
Oh, I'd rather keep meeting and keep the progress going. I see no reason to slow down.
I think the issue is staffing, just so everybody knows that.
So
now that the legislature is in session, that's why today Bev is going to have to leave, and somebody else will come in and be here in case we need them.
It's also the fact that you guys are going to start to write the report based on the conversation we had, Linda.
Yes,
and
we're going to. I think
starting to write the report, then 2 weeks is a short time to come back with a document that you can discuss. So maybe 3 weeks and not a month. I don't know. It's up to the group to decide that, because there's going to be a time when we're not able to staff the group.
So I have some thoughts, if it's okay to share them on this topic.
Of course.
First of all, I want to apologize for not being at our last meeting. And I just want everybody to understand, when I woke up that morning, I was fine. And about an hour later, I felt like an unbelievable amount of pain in my stomach, which just kept getting worse. And at about the time the meeting was starting, I was literally crawling into the emergency room. And it turned out to be a kidney stone, which I've never.
Oh, goodness.
Before.
Which and you posted. You posted a picture of the kidney.
I know. But not everybody looks at my Facebook stuff. But I just want to apologize, because like that was the at that very moment, right when your meeting was starting, I was at the peak of the stress. But the good news is it passed the next morning, which I guess is unusual, but lucky for me. But I did miss it. Now I also want to point out that in the interim, I know you all discussed the last time this survey that's going to be made available to the employees. One of the issues was the importance of a letter from us collectively to the people who work at the hospital, really emphasizing that this is truly anonymous, number one, and number two, it's really important to our deliberations. And Sarah Wakai asked me to draft something. This week is a crazy busy week for me for a bunch of different reasons, but I thought I would ask Lori Hauser, which I did, to try, because she works there, and I thought perhaps she could best understand the sensitivities of her fellow employees there, to sort of draft a cover letter that really that she felt would resonate with the staff. And Lori graciously, with short notice, agreed to do that. And I don't know if did you send something, Lori? Did you send a draft, or I forget?
I sent it about 7 minutes before this meeting started. So
okay.
Thrown together with great haste at the last minute, but it's circulated to everybody's email.
So and the final thing I want to say is, if my recollection is accurate, I think we have discussed all of the major topics we've been asked to weigh in on. The only missing information right now is the outcome of this survey. And so if the question is how frequently should we continue meeting, I think, it's not likely we'll get the results of the survey for about a month, I think, from now, something like that. And maybe a week or two longer, actually. But in the interim, I think you know, as was just discussed, it's writing up the recommendations so that we can all look at a draft and vote on it. So my experience has been it's never particularly useful to try and write things by committee, especially when we're all talking. But maybe the best idea would be to sort of divide these things up and see who wants to take a stab at each one of the topics, and so we could all look at drafts and then reconvene when we have a sort of a draft of all the different topics, and then we can kick it around. So those are my thoughts.
Beverly and I did talk about this, and we realized that you're absolutely right, writing a report by committee, but looking again back at, you know, the questions that were posed and seeing if people want to, I don't want to stifle anyone's initiative, but if we, you know, could have someone be like in charge of that question and to garner, everybody should have the opportunity to put whatever they want for the consideration of the body, you know, whatever points you want in there. And then rather than then decide which points we want to include, and then go forward with that, with some of the editing and so forth falling to us, actually. Anybody looking at any other thoughts?
Can I point one thing out? I thought there was one other specific charge that we hadn't discussed yet, something about the definitions of behavioral health or neglect in a behavioral health context or something like that. It might have been the very last. I don't have the 8 things in front of me right now, but I feel like there was one more thing that we hadn't spoken about.
We had written it. I mean, because there are, Paul and Kim and I had, oh, and then I guess, yeah, had responded to that. So there are some recommendations, suggestions that could be a starting off point for the discussion. Somehow miraculously, I found that document. God knows why.
So I think what you were referring to, Lori, was number 8, which is review the statutory definitions of abuse and neglect in the behavioral health context.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yes.
There were some comments on that, quite a few, actually.
Well, actually, no, there are only 3 comments. All of those comments after that by Mike
Oh, I
are
see. Yeah.
much
Yeah.
more general about various, not just that recommendation 8 for that statutory charge number 8. So that's why I said, since we had made some proposals, that's a jumping off point for a discussion. I'm not saying that those are the proposals that would be the final, but just for the discussion, it's a good place to start from.
We did have presentations on that issue.
Yeah,
Is there
yeah.
any, does the task force see any need to have anybody else come in and talk to us about it, or?
I don't think so. I just think that we never talked about that specific thing like we did all the other pieces. So we should probably, and we don't need to do that now. We just should probably do that at some point before we write it up.
Okay, so today, actually looking at the agenda for today, we're going to start with you, Dr. Hauser. The amendment to the PSRB that was drafted by yourself. And then we are going to kind of discuss the advisory committee, that whole oversight kind of bridge that we're talking about. And then we can end up with how, if people are comfortable with this concept of laying it out from your personal perspective on each of the responses, like we did the last time. I think, when we had this document where we all put something in there, and then we saw that there were some commonalities in our thinking. I'm thinking that that is a good way to see where we come together and where we maybe have a difference or additional thoughts. Anybody? I see. What are there?
I don't know if I also had circulated my thoughts on the oversight piece
Right,
yesterday to folks. So
right, and I think
which
there's
covers two of the statutory charges, or at least the way I posted it.
right.
Okay, I'll just jump in to make a comment. First of all, thanking Lori for the accountability sections. I thought they were very well
But
written.
I think there's some confusion, at least when I read it, I was not seeing it the same way that we laid out. And so I think we need to refine this a tad. With
Absolutely. This was my thoughts of my understanding of, things and I know I wasn't getting everything accurate or correct, but you'd asked for us to all kind of draft up our thoughts. So this was my
Right.
effort in doing so.
So do you want to, let us start with your motion that you were going to bring forth about the PSRB? Wasn't that it?
That was last time.
No, we did that.
We already did that. Yeah.
We did that.
Well, I thought we did, but it's on the agenda. So
I think the agenda was just to discuss so there were documents that I had circulated about the PSRB and competency, and Nancy had provided some comments to those. And so that was what was on the agenda for discussion today, I think.
So are you entertaining making a motion to what we've already done or not?
I don't think we need a motion to discuss what's on the agenda, right?
No.
That was my understanding of what we were going to do today, was talk about these documents and people's thoughts and feedback and the comments and things like that.
Okay.
If you
All
want me
right.
to-
If that is the understanding of the rest of the members, just shake your head or wave your hand. And
Well-
because I was surprised it was on here, but I wasn't sure if I had missed something. But I do believe, in looking back on the minutes, that we did take a vote on this, on the PSRB.
At the end of the last meeting,
Yeah. Yes.
and the discussion, someone asked that we revisit the document that Lori presented and Nancy amended. So there should be a discussion to make a decision which document or how that conversation will end. Because when I watched the YouTube live tape, that came up on it because I wasn't at the meeting. So it's just a discussion on Lori's document.
The one on accountability.
With my edits,
With your edits, yes.
The PSRB.
the PSRB with my edits. And that already has in it Lori's dissenting opinion.
Right, which we had just
Worked
talked
through.
about last time, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want me to just give me a start on that
Sure.
document?
Just
Okay. So first of all, and I think I circulated an email yesterday, I realized afterward that the version I had sent to everybody didn't include a couple comments that I had in the margin, which maybe would have helped. Because there was a place, I think in the first paragraph, where it says about the PSRB being abolished and NGRI equities treated akin to civil patients, where I had a comment saying, Nancy, would a reference to or a citation to Olmsted be appropriate here?
I
Is
remember
that-
that comment.
Where
been
is that?
It's not in the document I sent. That's what I'm saying. I
Okay.
sent you guys the wrong version because I got them on two different computers. So I thought that I didn't know if that was an appropriate citation there. But then more importantly, in the second paragraph, I had a comment at the end of the first sentence saying, Nancy and/or Paul, I could not recall other specific reasons you had cited in opposition to the PSRB. Please add a few here so as to balance this paragraph.
Wait, I'm totally lost. When you're talking about paragraphs, which document are you talking about? The
Is this in the
PSR.
minutes?
PSRB document, yeah.
Okay, so when you say second paragraph, is that
The one that begins, those who favored
Right.
its abolition felt.
Okay,
Yeah.
Can you send the one out with the comments?
I can send that.
No, not your comments.
Not-
I guess she has a
Oh.
version with that she had
Oh.
comments in.
Right.
Okay,
Because Nancy, your point here is well taken on this version, that that paragraph is lopsided and focuses mainly on the positives of the PSRB. And I was asking those of you who opposed it to include some of the reasons why you opposed it so that it was balanced.
oh, yeah, I remember that.
Is that
That all being said, I'm fine with just deleting the whole paragraph if folks think that would just be clearer. It's not necessary. I included that to try to provide some context for the Public Health Committee, but it's not necessary to what we're recommending. So we could just lift it.
Could I just suggest that perhaps, for the sake of everybody being on the same page, that you send this out? And I mean, Kim isn't here, so but how do people feel on just voting on this the way we know it now? It's
Well, we
kind
don't
of,
look what this is. Are we all looking at the same thing?
that's right, we don't. So I'm asking, should we?
So can we just share? So to that point, can I reiterate Paul's comment? Laura, if you have it in front of you, by that grimace, I'm thinking you might not have it in front of you.
I don't.
Or somebody has.
I have in
And
front
my
of
work computer
me-
and I have my home computer, and I have things on both places because I send from
All
work.
right, so
or,
Nancy,
you know.
do you have it?
What I have on my computer that I'm looking at right now is Lori's draft with my comments. It doesn't include Lori's comments, like she talked about Olmsted. Doesn't have that, but it's my redlining of what Lori wrote. I can send that out.
Okay. At
Okay.
least that's something that we can work off of.
Or can you share it so we
Was
can?
this-
Okay,
but-
I mean, could you
Oh, I
put it
can't
up on
share
the,
screen because I don't think I can share screen because I'm not.
Yeah, you might have to just send it out.
Yeah. I'm not.
So Lori, is that a document we already received from you?
You received it from Nancy. The one that she's gonna send out with her comments was
Oh,
what she
but
had
I-
sent in response to mine last week or before
and-
last session.
And we did receive it from her, you're saying?
Yes, yes. So you guys should already have it.
All right, so because
I was pointing out two minor things that I didn't include in that I'm trying to
Oh, what
explain now as to.
email? Oh, that one, the CT. Okay,
okay, I just got a note from Kim that she's stuck in a meeting
yeah.
and probably won't be able to make the meeting today.
Okay, do I have
Okay.
everybody? I'm looking.
Mike,
And
do you have the document and can share it?
I have the document. I just want to make sure which one. Nancy, you sent two things: competency restoration, Hauser, NBA
I'm
comments, and
looking at the
PSRB
PSRB one.
with dissenting opinion, Hauser, that one?
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right, so I have it.
I'm sending, I mean, just send it to everybody. so-
Okay.
okay,
All right, it's the red line version, right?
Yes. Okay, it just went out.
Sound effects to prove it.
I also have the other one, the competency one, if we need to get to that, but
Yeah. Yeah. Come on now.
And I guess I'll go further to say that I'm fine with most of what Nancy changed. I just had 2 points or 2 questions, I guess, to raise regarding that. I wasn't sure like why the necessity of deleting that first sentence is, or the majority of the first sentence. It just explains why or kind of where the PSRB came from. It's just historical context. So I wasn't sure what the opposition.
I thought that that was very biased in favor of using a system like this. And that it really isn't necessary to go back and talk about Reagan and Hinckley. And I mean, I don't think that's necessary. I think that's overstating the case for the PSRB. So that's why I
Well,
just,
okay. I mean, I can see that. I guess I would say it, in some ways, it kind of, you could also argue the opposite, because it was an outgrowth of something where the pendulum swung very far in one direction. And so
Right.
it kind of explains what, the context in which it arose, which
But, yeah,
a lot of
I think-
reforms have been made since then back the other way.
So I went through and reading that last time I got it. And now again, I had the same reaction. First I said, oh, that was a nice sentence.
Yeah.
Why do we need to take it out? And then I said, yeah, maybe it's too much info and it's 35 years or 40 years old, whatever the hell it is. But to your last point, Lori, I actually think that now that you've said it, I think Nancy, I agree with Lori's interpretation of how one would read that. In other words, it was a reactionary, like a lot of legislation, it was a reactionary response to a kind of a one-off event.
Yeah.
And people might say, Jesus, that was 100 years ago. That doesn't really apply today. Why do we still have it? So I don't think it's bad to leave it in. I don't think it's bad to take it out.
People that actually would use that
Right.
comment or whatever to argue for its abolition.
Right. And so would we just put in that it was a response to a one-time event? It was a reaction to a one-time event.
That's what it says.
Well, but
Yeah.
let me ask you a question just for my own information. Did the issue with the death of the little girl in Middletown, did that have anything to do with this? Wasn't that about the same time?
It's 4 years later.
Oh, okay.
It was in 1989. The PSRB became much more restrictive after that incident, but it was already in place for 4 years.
So anyway, I'd leave it in personally, but I think I don't think it's a big deal either way. I just think, if you don't have something in there in the end, people are going to say, geez, I wonder why they ever made it in the first place. And it's kind of puts it in some perspective.
It would be more like a background kind of thing, and I'm not sure that it is pejorative or in any way. It's just a fact. That's what happened. And maybe to have a background or something there. But I know there's going to be a lot of editing before this thing is done. So is it the sense of folks?
I can add from my experience in the legislature and saying with a fair amount of confidence that there's probably not more than a handful of legislators who have even the most remote concept of what the PSRB is, let alone how long it's been around. And I think trying to explain that it's it's somewhat unique, and what its origin was, I think would be helpful as people try and figure out what they want to do about it. So I do think it'd be good to have a little bit of historical context there.
yeah, that's fine. I mean, I don't have any objections.
Okay. Do you want to continue, Lori, and walk us through this?
Yes.
And Nancy, chime in when it gets to your part.
No worries.
So I thought the next comment was appropriate, having are of the opinion rather than acknowledged. My only other, I guess, major comment to these comments was with regard to that second paragraph. So again, I think either we add a couple points to why people felt it should be abolished, and then also include a couple points about why people can see some of its benefit, or we just ditch the whole thing. Because the way you altered this, Nancy, now there's a couple comments about those who want to abolish it, but then none about the benefits of it. So it kind of went the other way. So either we kind of include points on both sides.
Let me just ask for a little clarification. So this is the dissenting opinion. That is your opinion that you ask us to include. No, okay.
This was a write-up of what we all agreed on I mean, essentially there was near unanimous agreement as you read on for all these points. And then I included in the dissenting opinion, just the piece that I disagreed with. There was only one aspect of these recommendations we were making that I disagreed with. So,
well, and I think there's even more of a like we took a vote just to support that legislation. We never took a vote on if we're for abolishment or for the PSRB, or if I mean, it was just that we felt that the changes that this bill would have would be good for the PSRB. That's what I felt like we voted on.
I agree. I think we
so
sort
then,
of
so then we
said-
can just take the whole thing out. If that is that what you're saying, Paul? Like just
Well-
drop that paragraph altogether? Because we don't really need to comment on whether we think it should be abolished or we think it's beneficial. That's,
I don't
we're
know
agreeing that
about
we think it
that,
needs to be
because-
amended.
Because I think there's some of us who still feel it should be abolished, but.
Well, there's some of us that still think it has benefits. So either we
Right, no,
conclude
but my-
both pieces.
No, but my point being that because there are some of us who still think it should be abolished and some who think it still has benefits. The only reason that we're going, at least for me, I don't know, I don't want to speak for Paul or Kim, but I think certainly for me, the only reason I'm sort of going along with these modest amendments to it is because that's what's reasonable to get now. I don't think that the legislature has enough information, and nor can we give them enough information for them to actually go along with abolishing it. So it would be a really big ask for us to make that recommendation. So in lieu of making that recommendation, we can sort of live at the moment with these amendments. So I don't know that it's irrelevant to say that people still want to abolish it and other people think it still has benefits. Yes, I said that it violates people's rights and makes decisions on a non-clinical basis. If you want to make the scales a little more even, if you want to come up with, one or two perceived benefits, others identified a number of perceived benefits such as blank and blank,
So
and then we
why
can-
don't I do that? Why don't I sort of drastically shorten the rest of that paragraph to like 2 points the way you did and
Yeah.
leave it at that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that would
Right.
then provide the context that some people, kind of see where it should be abolished. Some people see it still has benefit. That gives the legislature both those sides.
Yeah.
And then, but here's what we're all willing to live with in the interim.
Exactly.
And
Right.
if they really want to have anything in depth, they can review the hearings.
Right.
So in actuality, the question that was posed to us was to actually examine the role. And pursuant to section 17A of the substitute Senate bill. Did it ask us whether we wanted to keep the PSRB or not, or just comment on the language of the bill?
It asked us anything.
Number 6, the question, the
Oh,
major
sorry. Yeah,
question.
You're right.
It asked us to examine the role of it. It didn't ask us to specifically comment on that proposed bill.
Right.
We used that as a way of discussing our amendments.
It was. It does say the board established pursuant to section 17A, substitute Senate Bill number 404, Public Act number 1886. 2.
That was what established the PSRB. That's not the Senate bill, that bill 294, whatever it was that we were talking about, that Monty had spoken to us about. That's
Right.
what was being proposed to amend it. So
I think that, I mean, I get the bias. I think I still think there's value from an educational point of view for the legislature to say, but I would guess to your point, Laura, I would short it up, make it proponents or defendants, what I guess you don't use defendants because there's a legal connotation, but proponents of the PSRB cite blank and blank, you know, and those who favor abolishing it cite this and that, you know, and I think 2 to 3 points in either argument, which I think is balanced, but I think that's the conversation we've had internally, right?
Yeah,
Right.
that's just that's exactly what I said, you know, just to add at that sentence,
Yeah.
perceived benefits such as blank and blank. That's all. That's all it needs.
So beyond that, I'm good with the other comments, changes and whatnot.
Okay, that makes it very easy.
So are we going to accept, are you going to bring this back in the way, the format that we want to submit it, or are you going to are we just gonna vote now? What is your pleasure?
If you like, because I do need to edit this paragraph to be, you know, to be more balanced. So if you like, I will do that. I'll accept Nancy's comments. I'll keep that first sentence. I'll accept the rest of her comments, and I'll truncate that second paragraph, send that around, and then we already voted on the recommendations. So I mean, this can just like slide into part of the report, and we can.
You asked for a dissenting opinion, and we, because the vote was, I think, everyone but you were for it. So then you asked for the dissenting opinion. This is your opinion. It seems to me, for the clarity, if
well, but so I guess my thing was, so we're going to submit something in writing for the dissenting opinion, but not have anything for the affirming opinion.
Oh, no.
We've got, it's all there. And
This document summarizes.
I think it covers both.
Yeah, this document summarizes our whole discussion. It includes my dissenting opinion at the end, but you know, this can be something like I said, I'll make these edits, and if we want to sort of set this aside as a piece to put into the final report, and then we can all, you know, when we get to the final editing, we can do that.
Yeah, I think that's what I would agree with. Let's make those edits, send it to us electronically. We don't need a public hearing to approve it electronically. We've already voted on it. So, and then it'll be part of the final document, which we're going to have to vote on. We're going to have to vote on that anyway. So I totally concur. So somewhere between now and the next meeting, Lori can do the edits and suggest, which should take a few minutes, sounds like. And, thank you, Lori. Appreciate it.
All right. Is there any other discussion on this issue? So then we can the second document that Dr. Hauser brought forth was the one that she sent yesterday. Is that the one we're going to the advisory committee, the Office of Inspector General, CVH, and Whiting oversight committees? How this is
there was the other document was that Nancy had commented on already, was the competency restoration piece. So I don't know if we wanted to talk about that first, because that was on the agenda from last time, I think.
Well, it's the pleasure of the task force. What would you like to do? Discuss this or wait or bring back what? Nancy, did you have something that you brought forth on competency?
Muted, Nancy. You're muted, Nancy.
I'm sorry, better? Okay. So yes,
Nancy, if I do this and this, we can't hear you.
But I was looking at the document. I wasn't looking at the screen.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So anyway, I sent it along when I did it, but I can send it out again if you guys want. I'll send it right now.
Well, let's stop here. Do you want to discuss that, or shall we discuss what's on the agenda?
Well, this is Lori's document as well, so
Is it the one that she sent out yesterday?
no.
Well, this one was supposed to be about the advisory committees. Let's bring yours back next time, Nancy, so at least we
Mine,
have.
it's Lori's.
This is
It's
Lori's
Lori.
document. She sent it out at the same time with the dissenting opinion.
It's Lori's document that I edited at the same time I edited the PSRB document. So they're both Lori's that she sent out at the same time.
All right,
Both things were on the agenda last time. We just didn't get to.
Yeah, we just have to finish it up. I'm gonna
all
send it.
right.
So let's do something because no
I'm
point
sending it right
debating
now.
it for too long. We're going to address them both. I'm sure we have time.
This shouldn't take as long. Okay. Sent. Oh, with no sound, sorry. Oh, there it is, John. Okay, now we got the sound. I don't know why if it looks small on my page. I don't know why if it looks small on yours. But no, I know, I'll fix this. Here we go. There we go. Now I can see it. And actually, I remember when we discussed it at the last meeting, if you look at the last paragraph, the third paragraph, where I added in including individuals with lived experience, that's because I was confused about the two committees that we were recommending. So I'm not sure anymore that that sentence is appropriate for this document.
Yeah, I think you said you were talking about the advisory board.
Yeah, exactly.
And I
And-
agree with that.
Yeah.
Right, but I think it is because we're talking about the
Right.
This is the multi-agency board that we're
Okay.
talking about meeting quarterly, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Okay.
It's all part of the kind of bridge, the oversight, the community involvement, opening the windows and doors.
I'm not sure that only at hospital though would be on that.
The
Like
what?
Say again.
the currently confined at, you said both those currently confined
Right.
at Forensic Hospital and those have been discharged, like, I'm
Well-
not sure if that would be feasible for patients at the hospital.
Why not?
Oh, I think it could be.
Oh, sure it is.
You think they should be making,
They
have
could-
input in making decisions about the lives of their current peers or their own situations? I mean, I think that might be,
Who better to make those recommendations? Seriously, who better?
Which we're talking about the advisory committee or the oversight committee.
That's where I get confused too.
So
this, with regard to competency, I was just talking about the folks in the state that in any way deal with competency, so DOC and the judicial and Whiting and OFE and all these folks that we just meet and talk regularly about, different issues in the system and how one is affecting the other and how, influxes in one area, like analyze the data to figure out what's driving competency and, if there's disparities in one part of the state versus others and just trying to figure some of these things out so that people have a coherent sense about how it's supposed to work and they can make recommendations about how to fix it. I'm not sure that folks embedded in the process at the time would be able to do that.
Yeah.
Should
So
be able.
maybe
It
we
should.
look at,
What was that? You mean practically speaking would be able or
I-
cognitively speaking?
No, I'm saying, should they? Like, I mean, especially if, well, might not necessarily be talking about specific patients or cases, but I'm a little reserved on that one.
I could definitely see people who have been through the process. They should be there.
Sure, but not currently.
Without a doubt. I don't know. I'm kind of flipping a coin on current. I think that they should be involved in the oversight committee.
Yes, that I'm fine with.
Right.
This other thing,
But like insofar as the process, I think I would rather hear from someone who's been through the process. But I can also see a case for having someone who's in the process to say, hey, this is what it's like still.
But, all right, so
I'm kind of split on it right now.
That would be, that might be
let
very
me
challenging
refresh.
logistically though, right? That might be
Well, we're
tricky.
doing it for the PAMI Advisory Council. We have right now at least 2 patients at Whiting who are on the PAMI Advisory Council. And they're working out the logistics. It's, you know, they just need to be able to have access to a computer and Zoom or a telephone so that they can be part of the meeting telephonically. But we have people doing that exact thing on the PAMI Advisory Council.
let me just read to you the summary of our last meeting when we discussed the committees. The discussion continued on to the CVH and Whiting Oversight Committee. The task force clarified what the difference between the Oversight Committee and another group that can be formed with large stakeholders and agencies. Paul Acker mentioned that the legislature needs to be involved in a group with the agencies involved. And Linda Schwartz suggested to make a recommendation to the governor on creating a group with all agencies involved. Nancy Ellsberg recommended that the group be considered by the legislature and not the governor. The discussion continued about the role and authority of the Inspector General and Oversight Committee. And Lori Hauser gave an explanation of how she would see the process with the Inspector General and Oversight Committee. In addition, the role of a commissioner in relation to the committee was discussed. And that's what I thought we were going to start with today. So if I'm following you, you're saying that you feel that lived experience, folks who have lived the experience should be both on the oversight or the advisory committee.
I think both.
Both.
Okay.
But that
And
doesn't.
I'm saying, I regard to the write-up about competency restoration, when we're talking about this multidisciplinary, multi-agency board group, whatever you want to call it. Folks who have been through the process, I think that makes sense. Folks who are currently in the process, I don't think that that makes sense. And given that I'm hearing some reservation from other folks on the committee about this, would it make sense to, at this time, at least leave it as, you know, folks who have been through the process and not.
I'm not sure I understand the objection to people who are currently going through the process.
Are you talking? No, wait a minute. Let's just be clear here. The Office of the Inspector General, okay? Then you have the Oversight Committee.
Right.
I believe that we decided that the OIG would report to the Oversight Committee.
Yes.
And that the Oversight Committee would have a link to a greater authority either at the General Assembly or the governor. They would have the firepower to lift it to a place where someone could make a decision.
Right.
And I'm talking about something different.
This is the quarterly kind of getting DOC, DMIS, you know, housing
OFE,
people,
judicial,
yeah, judicial, and all those people together to look at the current competency restoration. So you might get like the jail diversion people and other groups involved in that, as well as people who've been through it and have not had good experiences, because we tend to always pick the people who've had great experiences to tell us, oh my God, the system's great. Um, and so, but yeah, I mean, because if we're looking at, like, I think we really need to take a look at this in a way that we can work on, you know, housing issues. And I even thought that this was larger, that this was also about the discharge process in this too, Lori, because we wanted to look at housing issues and getting people out, and other issues about getting people into the community so that they don't get stuck in Whiting or Dutcher or CVH, that there's places for them to go where they don't have to wait 18 months to leave.
Right.
Because that's a piece of the competency process. If there were places where that folks were able to be in the community and receive the treatments, the structure, and receive the then do more outpatient restoration. Right now, it's very challenging because a lot of those pieces are not in place. That's why. So that's the piece that I'm talking about. As far as the current patients, even from a practical standpoint of people who are there for competency restoration, sometimes they're there for 60 days, 90 days. They're not going to be the same person every quarter. And so that doesn't make sense to kind of move it, you know, having somebody different. And I think that somebody that's embedded in the process at the time, they might be too driven by their own agenda, which isn't like everybody else's agenda. And it makes more sense to have somebody distanced from that, to like Paul said, someone who just recently been through the process and had either a good or bad experience or both, you know, have multiple people, then that might make more sense to get that person's input. But
You
would
really got
strongly-
me with their short-term patients and they wouldn't be around for the next meeting. That helped.
Because you want some continuity and flow so they understand
Yeah,
the
that makes
process.
sense.
It takes
Right.
months. It takes months and several meetings. It would be like me doing, you know, a patient experience type committee and having a current patient in the middle of it. That really wouldn't be logistically practical. Whereas we always want to include prior patients. So I think it makes a lot of sense actually to have someone with experience. I think we could qualify it to maybe meet everyone's concerns by saying someone with recent, and define that past 3 years, past 5 years, whatever.
Yeah.
So that it's not somebody who did it 20 years ago.
That makes sense.
Okay, that works.
Yeah, because you're going to get different responses if the person that you pick, John, for your committee is having surgery tomorrow, or if they're already through surgery.
Exactly. But okay, good.
Yeah.
So we settled that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what group is that?
That's for
Is that-
the
talking about competency restoration.
Advisory.
the competency restoration advisory committee.
Yeah.
Well, would they only be doing competency restoration, or would they be broader? You have now, there's advisory committees, both to Whiting and to CVH. And we've kind of not seen them be too
Right, but this is kind of looking at how the system is functioning and if the system is functioning.
Statewide.
Which is different than the oversight committees for Whiting and CVH and the other state hospitals that we want to propose, because that's specifically how those hospitals are functioning.
This
Okay.
brings together like multiple
agencies
in multiple aspects, not just what's happening in the hospital.
Right. It's more systemic than having that microscope on Whiting or CVH or.
Right. It's a broad, all of the psych hospitals, the state psych facilities. Would that be part of it?
No, because they don't
They
deal
don't do
with the
comp-
Oh,
forensic.
the OIG, the
it's-
IG.
It's systems level. It's systems level. The IG reports to the oversight committee,
Right.
to the oversight committees.
And is that the whole workings of the services to?
I mean, Demas, is that all of Demas? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, I'm asking that. I think that I would like to suggest that is what it should be, because, you know, that would give them the license. Let me just say that it would give the OIG the power, the task of looking at all of these systems And if something went wrong in one place and it wasn't CVH or Whiting, they could still look into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for the Office of Inspector General and the corollary advisory boards, I think we are all in agreement that those should be for the hospitals, all state facilitated.
And all of the
but-
services, not just the hospitals, if there was a
Yeah.
complaint about something,
You're talking about the LMHAs as well?
say again, I'm not sure what an LMFHA is.
The local mental health authorities, are you talking about that as well?
Well,
I mean,
what
that's
if there was a complaint?
Those are private nonprofits.
right,
Yeah, they
but
are private nonprofits.
they're under,
Do
Tammy.
yeah.
they're under who?
Well, but they're advised by Demas. I don't know if advised is the right word, but
So if you had a complaint within the system of care, the system of care of the state of Connecticut for people with psych and mental health issues, if there was a complaint, would this OIG be empowered to investigate? Or because it's a heavy,
So
it's an investment, but you want to,
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm testing you, but I'm just,
I hear what you're saying, Linda, and the thing is, the system is very complex because Demas has places that they actually run, but then they also have places that they grant funds to
right.
Mhm.
to serve in their stead, and it's like, I think there's different processes that go on at each place.
Well,
and
so-
it depends. Like abuse and neglect would go right to Pammy, right?
No, not necessarily. Pammy doesn't have any authority. It's not like the people with IDD, when there is abuse and neglect, then there is authority in DDS, but there's no abuse, neglect corollary to that in Pammy, or in mental health.
Right.
You're talking about the CROs, I think, the civil rights officers. And if you had a complaint against somebody, you would file a complaint with the civil rights officer and the client's rights officer.
Yeah.
And you would file that at the facility. So the LMHA, the local mental health authority, would have a civil rights officer, and it goes up to Demas. But it wouldn't start with
Right, through the appeal process, but
Right.
abuse and neglect is a different thing.
abuse and neglect is a different thing, and there's no protective services for people with mental health diagnoses in the state of Connecticut. So if you're going to complain about abuse or neglect, you're going to complain about it to the client's rights officer. And then usually what they do is they'll find that there may or may not be a work rule violation. But it's mostly for the employee. There's going to be some sort of penalty for the employee, and then it goes through the unions and stuff. But it's not a protective services component like it is for people with IDD.
So then maybe we make sure that the Inspector General has that IDD power,
Oh,
because
that's a big, that's
you
a
think
big
that's
thing.
huge?
That's huge, because then you're talking about the old Protective Services Division of AID, which is now at DDS. They have the authority to remove people from places. They have authority to do what are called protective service plans. They can do immediate protective service plans. It's just like DCF, but for IDD. And there's a component for elderly. We know about elderly services. There's a
Right.
component for IDD, but there is no corollary for people with mental health diagnoses.
well, the IG would not be, the IG would be the investigative arm.
Right.
And that would be the client's rights officer, where the individual, him or
No,
herself.
no. The client's rights officer is very limited in what they.
Well, that's where they usually look at work rule violations.
So
They're
Mike,
going to look at a work rule I mean, that's typically what they find is there's, there is or hasn't been a work rule violation. But they don't come up with relief for the person complaining.
Right, but I would like, I mean, I think that I would want the inspector general to investigate, but I also think that I would want to make sure that they're providing relief to the person while the investigation's going on.
So that's all. And then you also have to think about whether you want anybody to become a mandated reporter, because we have mandated reporters for DCF, we have mandated reporters for IDD. There are no mandated reporters for people in the DEMA system.
Yeah,
I
no,
thought there was.
there are. They just passed the law
yeah,
last
I
year.
thought there was.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was last year or the year before. Coming out of Whiting, they said anyone that works in the DEMA system is now a mandated reporter.
Okay. And
Yeah.
who do they report to?
The commissioner.
Yeah, but it's commissioner or the commissioner's delegate. And so does the commissioner now have a separate office for abuse, neglect complaints? Because obviously it doesn't go to the commissioner.
No, I think,
I don't believe so.
So
and
how
I
does
think
the-
we're talking about a possibility of using this oversight or the IG as a way in which to actually have
that,
a buffer between someone who will actually do the investigation.
There's Mary Kate, if someone is a mandated reporter, who do they complain to? Who is the authority to whom they complain? They file a complaint.
They use the chain of command. So they would report to their supervisor. Their supervisor would report to their supervisor. There's a record kept that goes to the commissioner. Human resources would investigate. There would be an investigation process.
So it's it's like a work rule kind of thing, as opposed to the way it works for IDD or DCF, where you're looking to get relief for the individual. So it's a personnel kind of thing.
I think that there are two separate tracks. There is a grievance procedure for patients, and we have individuals at each facility who
Right.
handle patient grievances.
Those are the client's
So-
rights officers.
Exactly.
Right.
So you're talking about two separate things.
But in the mandated reporter track, we report to our supervisors, and as Mary Kate said, there's an investigation that ensues. But if in the course of that, as it goes up through the layers of administration, if there appears to be something that warrants criminal investigation, then the police are notified and brought in.
Correct.
So you're trying to figure out then if there's a role for the IG in this?
In some agencies, an IG has all the purview of the entire entity. They do the investigation, they make recommendations to the next echelon. And whether or not those are implemented is not anything, it's just the facts. This is what the OIG found. And sometimes the way in which it works is if they find a write-up, okay, at a certain place, they give it to the oversight committee, but each individual, like if it has something to do with Whiting, then they can comment on each one of those. But it goes, the final decision of what really happens generally comes from the legislative arm or whoever endowed the oversight committee with their authority.
So then it's taken out of the whole personnel.
Right.
thing.
It's no longer a workplace violation. It's
Right.
did this happen?
Right.
Which I think is important, because when you look at Bill Shahadi, I mean, he wrote a letter over 10 years ago saying he was being abused, and they internally looked into it and decided, oh, he's too crazy, so it's not happening. And then we find out later, oh yeah, it was.
Mhm.
So I think having that outside entity coming in is extremely important.
Right, and that's essentially what.
What the
um,
IG would do.
Yeah.
But that's good, getting back to the analogy with IDD, that's essentially what the old Abuse Neglect Division, AID, did.
But did they have the power
Oh,
to
yeah.
kick it up to a level where someone will make the decision?
They made the decisions. They had the power to, but
They had
again,
the
it
power to
wasn't-
make the decision.
right, they didn't do things to the employee. That was the other branch of it. They would make decisions about, for example, removing somebody from a placement and move them to another placement. They literally, I mean, they did what DCF does. They could remove people from their home and put them in a placement. They could make an order. For an example, something that I had to deal with frequently is you'd get, no offense, John, but a hospital that would issue a DNI, a do not intubate, a do not feed, no hydration. And AID would go in and do an investigation and find out that there was no reason why this person should have this order, and order the hospital to feed them. And then, of course, somebody would object and would have to go to court, but that's another.
So the discussion in several places, it talks about an Office of Inspector General for just, it does not talk about just Whiting and CVH. It talks about all of the hospitals. But if you're going to ask to constitute the Office of an Inspector General and endow them with those capacity to actually, investigate and make recommendations, you don't want to do it just for 2 facilities. You want to see about what all of the capacity of people providing, this kind of care. And you also want that the individuals, for example, if some complaint is made about CVH, the CVH gets to look at it. There's a recommendation there, and then they say what they think about the recommendation. But they're not the ones that decide whether it's done. They kick it up to the oversight committee.
So I would hope that the Inspector General, if they found something that was criminal going on, that they would call the police in.
They probably would.
Okay.
That
And I mean, I think the thing that's important too is that the Inspector General's office has like unfettered access to the information that they need to be able to complete the investigation.
yes, right.
That there's
definitely.
no stalling, or
Right.
that they have that kind of juice.
But they don't have to submit a Freedom of Information request to get what they need.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Nor on the other side, though, and this is something that was big in AID when it was at the Office of Protection and Advocacy, are those files FOIAble? We would often get Freedom of Information requests from people about what happened in an abuse investigation. And I was frequently, would have to turn down those Freedom of Information requests. So that's another piece of it. But this is all would have to be put in statute.
Right.
Well, we don't have to write the statutes. We just have to
Right.
Thank God.
We just have to make the recommendation that they do it.
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly going to bandy this about, but I think one of the lessons of why we're here is, just as you mentioned, that this has been going on for years, and no one was, who would say no? Who could say, you go in there and take a look at this and let me know what's going on? And the other part is about records and so forth. With an Office of Inspector General, oftentimes when they are assigned to they are part of DEMA, so they are part of the VA, they are they do not have to ask for the records. That's there on behalf of the agency itself. But what happens is, I mean, I've gone through this with the OIG in the national level. It does bring a lot of these issues to the forefront. Many of them, you don't need a law. You just need somebody to take the bull by the horns and make some changes. So sometimes that's what happens too. But when you think about how many people rely on the mental health, and it's growing even as we speak, the mental health system of our state, our country.
So where does this leave us? I'm sort of at a loss.
So when we're defining the office of the Inspector General, in the document that Dr. Hauser created for us, she has like described creating an independent standalone office of Inspector General, ongoing independent oversight of the hospitals. And such an office would need to be properly staffed and so forth and necessary to receive and investigate complaints from patients, staff, family members, and advocates, and to make recommendations to the existing hospital advisory boards regarding specific actions, plans to address these complaints. That's the mechanics. The echelon or how it goes from this on the levels. But are we looking for an independent standalone office, independent oversight of the hospitals and all services? I mean, I think I told you that for several years I was a public health nurse and all my patients were psychiatric patients living in Norwich. Some of the places they lived in were terrible. But the state was paying someone to let them have a room in their house. This would be a different kind of, send somebody out and see what's going on here. Is that what we want, or we just want to have the hospitals?
So can we put a floor and a ceiling in?
Okay.
And say that the floor is that we recommend that the Inspector General at least covers the hospital, but we're hoping that it would cover the entire system.
Seems reasonable. Because the specific charge to us was about the hospitals. And so I think it makes sense to address that and say, yeah, sure, we recommend this for the hospitals and even saying like the all state hospitals. But then also with the caveat or the note that it may make sense to consider this for the entire system, or the feasibility of that. Because I don't know how, and Mike, maybe you have more input on this because you seem to be the one most familiar with the Inspector General from before, but like I don't know how huge of an undertaking that would be, and whether that would be feasible. I think it's certainly feasible for the hospitals, but then we could kind of leave it to the legislature to decide whether they want to expand that.
Tell me what your question is about the IG.
I was just saying, like to Paul's point, that seems reasonable, to say we recommend that they create this specifically for the hospitals as directed by our charge here, but then also to suggest that they consider it on a broader basis for other providers of care throughout the system. And I was asking you, I don't know, like, is that just absolutely unreasonable to think that an officer of Inspector General could do that? Or is that just something that we should leave the legislature to?
Well, so you're talking about potentially private hospitals as well, right?
Well, and Linda was talking about like any,
No, I
LMHAs
was
and
talking about,
outpatient.
I was talking
anything.
about Demas. I'm not talking about private hospitals. That,
Yeah.
Oh, you're
you-
talking about just Demas. Okay. So-
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Well,
so-
yeah, but to be clear, some of the private hospitals get Demas funding.
All right.
So,
There you go.
So obviously, the broader the jurisdiction, the more money you're talking about.
Yeah.
And obviously, that is always an obstacle to everything in the legislature. So I think, I sort of by tradition, I'm an incrementalist, right? I like to get my foot in the door and then over time expand stuff. And so, keeping in mind that whatever we recommend, the legislature's got to do it. We don't have the authority, but if you want to put in front of them something that sounds very reasonable and doable, I would limit it as much as is practicable.
I think
Well, let me
the,
ask you this. Let me ask you this, Mike. If you're going to create an office of an inspector general for just 2 facilities, and that's their limit, how do you justify that?
Well, I mean, if you want to be purely sort of, if you want to monetize it, I'm just assuming the state is on the hook for a lot of money based on just what happened to Mr. Shahadi, right? I mean, so the avoidance of that kind of thing is clearly a cost savings, but right, it could be a part-time inspector general, right? I mean, there's a lot of options. I'm just saying, like, the bigger you make it, the more staff they're going to require, which means a bigger price tag. And then you get all the, Dr. Rodas can attest to this. I think, you get a lot of antenna go up among the private hospital I mean, you're just asking for more opposition and, you're just condemning it to defeat, basically.
Well,
I think it's going to overlap. The problem I have with it philosophically is, if I were legislator, I would say, well, what does the Demas commissioner do? It seems like there's potentially a lot of overlap. And again, I'm not the expert in this area, but I think the more we look like we're going to be redundant, the less likely we are to succeed. So, I mean, our task was the hospitals. Listen, I'm the last guy to argue with the fact that this whole thing needs a really good look-see. The question is that what the IG is going to be doing, managing from soup to nuts, or overseeing the program from soup to nuts? And I kind of agree with Mike on this one. I think.
Well, and I'm kind of the school that if you shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you end up in the stars.
Right.
I'm afraid of not asking for enough and ending up for that to be cut.
Right.
And-
Right,
and
there's
I
the
would just
theory of asking for everything you want plus, and letting that float and see what you get.
so then
If
maybe we're back to Paul's suggestion of saying, we recommend this for the hospitals. And that you may want to consider whether
I
this would.
I do it the other way around. I say we recommend it for all of Demas and let them cut it down.
That I agree. If
If they want-
it is our belief that we should have this for all of Demas, then let's say so. If they don't want to fund it, that's another thing. But it's not our decision. We're saying we think we need this. That's how I look at it.
I think we only get one chance to make an ask. So let's make it big and let them pull it away. Instead of compromising on something this important.
So let me just also ask another question of you, Mike. Several years ago in the General Assembly itself had a group. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was a group that would go out and do something, look at an agency.
Program
And-
review and investigation.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, program review and investigations. And they did a really, thorough job for the most part. A lot of what they recommended never happened, but at the same time, people were aware of what was going on, and that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
So
Cut
this
out
is
the budget.
this is kind of a, I'm all for asking for the moon.
Yeah, in this, On this topic, I think it just depends on how many lobbyists you want opposing what you're going to do. So
It-
broader you make it, the more lobbyists get. I mean, I don't mean to be totally cynical, but I'm just saying that's the way it works. And you know, people get afraid that, okay, if they take this one step, next they'll take another step. You know, it's just, it's not philosophical. It's just people protecting turf and stuff. So
Well, I think it
Right,
is
but-
philosophical because
the opposition, I'm
well-
saying, won't be philosophical. It's pure
no, but
turf.
what I mean is, I know that when people have, I mean, you talked about being an incrementalist, which is one way to do it. I also know that Gary Winfield looks at it the complete opposite way. You know, he looks at things when certainly giving people advice about putting something out, ask for everything you want and then some. And then you get something back that you can live with. So it's just a different philosophy
Yeah.
on
Who's Gary Winfield?
he's a state senator.
From New Haven.
Yeah,
The thing that I worry about, Mike, is no matter where we put our foot down, someone's going to go, "Oh my God, it's a slippery slope,"
Right.
and so they're gonna come out anyway. Let's get them all out in the open, you know, because they're all going to come out anyway. It's like we're standing on flat ground, and they're going to tell us it's a slippery slope.
It's
I
a
think.
calculated risk.
Yeah,
I got
it
that.
is. It is. It is, and I do respect your knowledge on this, but I just don't know if I can take a position that feels compromised to me.
Okay. That's a calculated risk. You know, the all or nothing strategy is always successful 100% of the time. You get one or the other.
So we're back to the floor and ceiling concept, Paul, we were alluding to earlier.
Well, I think what we were questioning was, it was really not quite semantics, but it was, do we say we recommend that the IG concept be applied to the two hospitals? And at some point, if you're interested, maybe all of Demas, or do we say the IG concept should be applied to all of Demas? And then maybe you settle for the hospitals.
I think we say, so where I'm kind of coming down on this now is that we say the state hospitals, not the two hospitals, but the state hospitals, with the recommendation of all of Demas
services. Yeah.
services.
Is somebody going to make a motion? Paul? Did you
Yeah,
make
so moved.
Second.
Okay. Is everybody,
Can you just say it again, Paul?
That we make the recommendation that the Inspector General has purview over the state hospitals. So this would include, you know, Capital Region, CMHC, you know, yada, yada. Because so that it's not just focused on Whiting and CVH, but then that we really recommend that they look at the whole system. Because abuse and neglect is abuse and neglect. It doesn't matter where it happens. It needs to be investigated and stopped.
So it is sort of a bifurcated motion or recommendation, right? You know, we're recommending for sure all state hospitals, and we also strongly advise you to consider all of
Demas services and
Right.
Just so we're clear, we say state hospitals, we're talking state mental health hospital.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Demas run.
Right, because I mean, I don't know, John Dempsey Hospital is a state.
No, yeah,
hospital.
right.
don't
No,
wanna be
I
don't
confused. Okay, got it. Thank you. So the motion's been made and seconded, is that right?
yes, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Can we, since it's 10 of 3, can we briefly discuss Lori's note to Demas staff? And the only comment.
Can I just say on that topic, I've been corresponding while we're talking back and forth with Sarah Wakai. She suggested a few edits, which I've made. I'm about to send it out to all of you so you can take a look
Well,
at
the
it.
only thing that I was going to suggest was it doesn't say on there that you can do it on your own time. I mean, on work time.
It will in the intro page that the survey has itself gives a lot more detail about it's voluntary. You can do this at work time. You can stop if you want to, don't have to answer. I didn't want to go into all that
Okay,
detail, you know.
okay.
And the only, Mike, I haven't seen, obviously you're at it. The only comment I had on it, Lori, and thank you again for doing that. I actually thought it was very good, except for, I didn't love that two from the end sentence. So we know all too often who do not work, to understand the environment, blah, blah. Those a little wordy anyway, that sentence. Plus it's a little pejorative for folks in the higher management above, since everybody's going to get it. I don't think it's actually necessary. I think if just take it out, we hope they'll take the opportunity to make your voice heard. It's only by understanding the perspectives of all involved. We look forward to your input. Actually, that's a nice positive, I thought, ending. But that was my only edit on the whole thing, actually. But we'll see. So Mike, was your edit, Mike? Did her edit change that sentence?
Sorry, I just forwarded to you incorporating the feedback I got from Sarah about a couple of minor edits, and there was an explanation of this. So take a look at it. It should be in your inbox. I see what you're saying, Dr. Rodas, but in fairness, what I had asked Lori to try and do is write it in a way that more employees would be likely to respond to it. And
You didn't redline it, did you?
I didn't. I just explained it.
So where are the changes? It's kind of hard to.
I explained it there. The only thing I changed was it makes it clear that we, the members of the task force, won't have direct access to the answers either, right? I mean, we're going to get a summary like everybody else, because the original language said that the management or whatever at the hospitals wouldn't have it. She also said, at one point it said Yukon Health Center, and then it said Yukon later. So she asked that it be both indicate Yukon Health Center. And she asked that we change in a few days to later today or soon thereafter, because her intention is that this would go out on Monday and the survey would come out very soon right after that. Obviously, some people won't be working at the moment it gets received. They'll be coming in later at night or whatever. So she wanted to make it clear it's coming very, very, very soon. So those are the only changes I made.
Right. And so is this still open to former employees, like recent former employees? No, so it's just those that are working there now in some capacity.
But the comment I made about former employees or recent retirees was about if they wanted to pilot it on people that actually were employees. That was a suggestion, because they wouldn't be eligible to complete the survey itself, because it's, are you currently employed? So and as far as that sentence, I'm fine either way with what the collective group thinks. That was sort of a way to try to appeal to folks that, kind of dismiss surveys because they think, oh, nobody listens to us anyways, or, like to try to appeal to that mindset. But I also understand your point too, John. So I'm curious what other folks think about that.
Okay, is that letter good to go, or?
Were there any other comments or thoughts, or?
Yeah, has anybody got any other additions or corrections, or is it good to go?
I think it should go out.
Yeah, I do too. All those in favor of the letter, please. All right, unanimous, except, okay, yes, all right, so it was a unanimous decision.
In terms of how it's signed, is everybody comfortable with just saying CVHW FH Task Force, or should it have our names, or what do you think?
I don't think it has to have names.
Just
Just task force.
Task Force is good.
Okay, all right, just making sure. And Lori, are you pretty confident that everybody who works there is generally aware that this task force exists and what we're up to and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
All
right. So I'll send this. I'll copy you all. I'll send this back to Sarah with a green light. Okay.
Probably wondering if we're still alive, Mike. We've been at it so long, they probably forgot about us by now. This will be a reminder, oh, they're still at it.
I'm sure somebody's monitoring our meeting. So
people ask me, once in a while, you guys still meeting? What's going on with that?
So.
Thanks again, Lori, for doing that. Thank you.
All right, back to
thank
the
you, Lori.
question about meeting. every other week or every third week? What do folks think?
I don't know that we're ready for that.
You don't think we're ready for every other
Well,
week? Or, I mean, you still want to keep it every other week or every third week?
I'd like to keep it every other week to keep the momentum going. We've got a good momentum here.
Okay, is there any
agree.
other? All right, I'll tell her. So that means that our next meeting is going to be
26th.
26th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are
I
we
do think
still,
we had a good meeting.
did we switch from 1 to 1:30 forever, or was that a couple of?
No,
off?
I
Which one?
can't
I might have
right
missed
now
that.
because of my personal circumstances. My
Oh.
husband is in the hospital, so
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah. So I have other. So that's at 1:30.
I'm
Or
good.
somebody else can start the meeting and I'll come in.
Oh, that's good. I just want to
Okay.
be clear. I didn't
It
know. That's
works
fine.
better for me right now.
Hi, Sheeta Beverly is
I
back.
keep signing on at 1 anyway, you know. They're like, oh, it's 1:30.
And we're gonna go an hour and a half. Is that it? To 3. All right. So we'll we have a few things that are going to be written up and brought back again for next meeting, but I'm wondering if people would just kind of, I know Kim isn't here, but the concept of dividing up or us each writing a portion of it and putting it in together, or do you want us to, for the final report, to have those questions and like we did before, that we made our comments underneath each question? Does that sound like, no, you just want to take one question, or do you want to be able to put your input into each one of those issues and then see what we can do? I mean, we're going to have a lot of editing to do.
We should just each take a question, I think, and write that up, and then people can make comments on it. You don't want each of us writing something on each of the 8 questions.
Well, it was a good way to see. And the only thing is, when we first did it, it was a good way to see where people stood.
Yeah, but we're way past that.
Oh, okay. All right.
And we have those comments as a framework anyway, right?
Yeah.
We have all those
Right,
comments,
right.
right?
They're a great
Right.
framework.
Right. You know.
So we're expecting, Mike, when did you say we're expecting the survey to be back or done? And
Back.
yeah,
I think she said it'd be like 4 or 5 weeks or something.
okay.
'Cause I think they're going to
And
do like
do
a
we
2-week for
do we
responding.
have,
And then,
I know we're coming up to the magic minute, but do we have a thought, when do we want this to be done? When do we want this report done?
Sometime this year.
I second it.
I'm not setting my
Second.
bias, my goal's too high here. This year though, please.
Well, if we can kind of chip away at some of these other pieces and discuss some of the, the write-ups and stuff, we'll come back to next time. Then we'll have some of that already done by the time the results get back. So hopefully we can wrap it up within the next, month or 2 after that.
Okay. So do you want to decide that now or decide that next time? Decide next time.
Let's do it next time.
We're not ready to decide it now.
All right. Okay,
It's done.
well, I
It's
As long
want
as
to
the
done.
thank
legislature
anyway.
will have us.
My dog's hungry.
want to thank everybody. I think we did have some good. You want to say something, Dr.
No, I
Rose?
want to say, have a nice weekend.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Everybody.
Thank you.
get your vaccinations.
I got
Bye.
mine. I'm done. I'm
I'm
done.
done.
Bye.
Yep.